Okay, we are open to the public.
Actually, we have 1 more minute left before we start, so we'll wait 1 minute.
All right, my virtual background is making me headless.
We don't want that. You'd rather see your background.
Oh my goodness! All right, my son is practicing the drums down where. Then Dr. Gray can send you a couple of
Careful what you ask for, though.
Ms. Stewart Campbell, we're gonna count you as present since we know you're here. We'll call this meeting to order, and Ms. Lister, if you will call the roll, please.
All right. Reverend Williams.
Who?
Present. Reverend Williams. Okay.
Present.
Dr. Mickelson. Dr. Morrison.
Present.
Mrs. Bowley.
present.
Mr. Munoz.
Present.
Mrs. Stewart Campbell. Present. Dr. Bonebrake.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lister. We're all present, count of 4, so I'll entertain a motion to recess into executive session.
Mr. President, I move the board recess to executive section to discuss potential litigation with our legal counsel pursuant to attorney-client privilege exception under COMA, and to discuss individual employee contracts and performance pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under COMA. And the open meeting will resume at 6:30 p.m.
Thank you, Reverend Williams. We have a motion to adjourn to executive session. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Bonebrake. Is there any discussion on the motion? I don't hear any, so we're ready to vote, Mr. Lister.
And the voting is open.
I'm not seeing it on my screen.
And you can just say
Say
aye
aye.
and she'll count it.
Okay, I'll just say aye.
Thank you.
And Ms. Foley also has her hand up, Ms. Lister.
All right. Thank you.
Aye.
And Mrs. Stewart Campbell.
It was moving to a new location in her home.
Okay, I'll just put not present at vote. All votes are in. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mrs. Lister. So we're adjourned until 6:30, executive session.
Y'all back yet?
I don't see no district.
Ms. Lister, do we have everybody back?
Not quite yet.
Ms. Bonebreak, do you have me?
No.
We can
Yes.
hear you.
Start video.
No, you're on.
Yeah, I think we're good. Dr. Mickelson, I believe I see everyone.
Great. We'll call.
Okay.
Are we good? If we are, we'll call this meeting back to order. And I think we have students from Quincy Elementary, and Ms. Sondrager I saw is the principal and going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So if we could all stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, we'll get this meeting started.
We have a flag.
Hamilton does.
There's one.
Are the foster kids there and ready?
They were on here earlier. I believe they're ready now.
All right, I see them. You guys want to start off?
Ready?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wow, that's one of the best pledges I've heard all year. So foster family, can you tell us your name and what grade you're in?
I'm in kindergarten.
Okay, and what's your name, sir?
Adrian.
And Adrian, there is your certificate on the screen. We'll be getting that to you and mailing that to you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Alonzo, and I am in 4th grade.
Alonzo, and there is your certificate. Again, congratulations for the outstanding job this evening.
Thank you.
I'm Erin and I'm in 7th grade.
Congratulations, Aaron. And I see, I was going to say we had the wrong certificate up. So Aaron, again, congratulations, sir. You did an outstanding job. And hey, the board, once we get to your sister, the board may have a question or two for you all. And your sister, you are absolutely beautiful. Actually, all of you are, but you are absolutely lovely, young lady.
Thank you. My name's Anaya and I'm in 9th grade.
All right, Anaya. And again, congratulations. You did a phenomenal job. We'll be getting you your certificate. With that, board members, do you have any questions for our young people? And Anaya, can you introduce your mother, or you must have someone that works in Topeka Public Schools to be presenting this evening?
My mom, Renee Foster, she's a para at Quincy Elementary School.
All right. Well, Mom, Ms. Foster, you have done a phenomenal job. With that, board members, do you have questions for any of our students?
Mrs. Boley, I see your hand raised.
Yes. Anaya, I'm going to ask you this question. Since you are the oldest of your siblings, I am assuming you saw what happened in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago. Is that true?
Yes.
So saying the Pledge of Allegiance, is there any difference in saying it now than before that particular incident?
Kind of, not really. It feels different, like a different meaning, but still kind of the same.
How so a different meaning?
Just different. Now that I'm understanding more what's actually going on around the world, compared to when I was younger and saying it, being a part of this one and what's really going on.
Well, thank you for that. I just wondered if it kind of changed your attitude a little, or even some of your other siblings, when you realize democracy can be so fragile, that our Pledge of Allegiance can mean so much now than before, or we just learned it and said it.
Does anyone have any other questions for the family foster? I can't see everybody's, there's too many pictures on my screen, so I don't know from my colleagues on the board. If you just speak up, that would be fine, because I don't see everybody's photograph on my screen. But I don't hear any, so we'd just like to thank you for your participation in our Pledge of Allegiance tonight. And Mrs. Bully's question was appropriate, I think, given the events of the last couple of weeks that we've witnessed. And also yesterday, it was a proud moment for us yesterday too. So, but thank you for your participation tonight.
Thank you to our young people. You all again have done an excellent job. And to our principal, Ms. Sondrager, who has the joy of selecting who's going to speak. And so it means a whole lot that she spoke. You're our first full family of 4. We've had a family of 2. We've even had twins, but not a family of 4. So excited for you all to start us off. With that, I'll turn it back on over to our school board president.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Next on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. So I entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Reverend Williams. Do we have a second?
Second, Bone Break.
Thank you, Dr. Bonebreak. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? I don't hear any, so Mrs. Lister, we're ready to vote.
And the vote is open.
And Mr. Gowan, you may have to take the agenda off because sometimes they can't see their screen when that's up. Thank you.
Mrs. Boley votes aye.
Thank
Bone
you.
Break, aye. Bone Break, aye.
Thank you.
Yes, and Stuart Campbell, aye.
Thank you. Dr. Morrison, aye. Thank you. All votes are in. Carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mrs. Lister. Next on the agenda is school highlights. So we'll turn it back over to Dr. Anderson.
Well, this is one of our favorite times. And so we're going to start off with our school highlights with Mr. Hare, who's going to share a few words of wisdom and thanks. He is the president of the Administrators Association. Following Mr. Hare, Dr. Gray has just an item to share with you. And as you've had a delivery from our wonderful JAG staff today, and perhaps 1 or 2 of them are also on. So we'll start off with Mr. Hare.
Hey, good evening, everyone. It is Board of Education Appreciation Month. So on behalf of the Topeka Public Schools administrators and staff, I just want to thank you for your dedication, your tireless work for Topeka Public Schools. And I'm sure that when you all had that inkling, in your mind about running, no one ever thought that you would be, on the school board at Topeka Public Schools when we enter into a global pandemic. But as you've done that, you've done that free of charge. I mean, you're volunteering during this pandemic, and obviously any time of the year, and you always do it with heart, and you always dedicate your time to our district. And here we are, each of you still leading us with professionalism, with passion, with compassion, and with motivation to serve Topeka Public Schools community. You continue to keep us balanced. You support and advocate for all. You give voice to our community, and you work side by side with us as we prepare our next generation for adulthood. We could not successfully carry out our mission to achieve excellence with families, schools, and communities through leadership, partner, and innovation if it wasn't for your governance and your support. So happy School Board Appreciation Month. Hopefully you received in the goodie bag a couple different masks today. One of the masks in there is simply our Topeka Public Schools mission. On the front of it says engage, prepare, and inspire Topeka Public Schools, which leads us in everything that we do. And you should have also got just another one that's a Jardine Jaguar, a red mask that represents, the school that I've been fortunate enough for the last 11 years to be the principal of, and I've been blessed and honored to serve. And it's been great to have your leadership and your support through all the 11 years for those who have been here and continued on. So wear that with pride, and that Jaguar one out in the community. I'm a little biased that, you know, it is the best middle school here in Topeka and Shawnee County. So we just want to thank you for all you do, and happy School Board Appreciation Month.
Thank you, Mr. Hare. And on that same thing of School Board Appreciation Month, that's the picture of the bags. Since we're virtual, we want to make sure everybody got a chance to see them. Board members, as you pick them up, there are a variety of things in there. Now, in addition to what's in the bags, we also have Ms. Valsquez, I don't know if I said that right, from JAG, but we'll start off first with Dr. Gray, who will share what all is in that bag, because you have something from the school, but also, you know, partners in the community. We're virtual. We want to make sure everybody got a chance to see them. Board members, as you pick them up, there are a variety of things in there. We have some, in addition to what's a replay or some audio matter. There we go. We got to love Zoom. Thank you, Mr. Gowan, for fixing that. Dr. Gray, do you want to share what's all in that bag?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Anderson. And again, to our wonderful school board, want to say congratulations to you guys as we recognize you on the School Board Recognition Month of January. Inside the bag, you will find, again, some wonderful masks. As Mr. Hare said, we have several masks from different schools that we have in the bag, along with some lanyards. We have coffee mugs. We have some notepads. Also, we have several letters from principals, just letters of appreciation to the Board of Education for all of your hard work and what you've done. Also, we have a special gift because we have Ms. Velasquez on with us this evening with JAG, and I believe she's going to share with us some of the great gifts that letters from principals.
Hi, my name's Emily Velasquez.
In just a minute, I think we're getting a little audio item, and it might be I don't know if it's Miss Velasquez. I don't know if you're playing it in your space at the same time. Let's try that again. We're going to turn it over to her. She went and bought roses for y'all, and so the flowers are from her, actually. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, sorry, I think I can hear.
Some of the great gifts that letters from principals.
If I may, it's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so it is Miss Velasquez. So with that, but you see her on the screen. She has given you quite a bit of love, as has Miss Teresa Canty from JAG. You met her last time with her student. And with that in mind, and Miss Velasquez, if there's anything you want to put in the chat, or feel free to do that. But I will tell you that she dropped off flowers for you. She had a mug with the lanyard and candy, and for each one of you from the JAG partnership. And Teresa Candy dropped those off today. And we thank you all for contributing to the School Board Appreciation and letting our board members know how much we love them. You'll see a lot of principals on tonight, and they're just here just to see you and just to wave. And with going on with the meeting, we just want to let you know we're Topeka strong, and we're strong because of you. So thank you for all that you do. We do have a proclamation this evening that we will prepare to read. We'll pull the proclamation up. Whereas the mission of Topeka Public Schools is to meet the diverse educational needs of all children and to empower them to become competent, productive contributors to our community in an ever-changing world. Whereas school board members are committed to children and believe that all children can be successful learners and that the best education is tailored to the individual needs of the child. Whereas school board members work closely with parents, educational professionals, business partners, and other community members to create educational vision we want for our students. And whereas school board members are responsible for ensuring the structure that provides a solid foundation for our school system. And whereas the school board members are strong advocates for public education and are responsible for communicating the needs of the school district to the public and the public's expectation to the district. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Topeka Public Schools Unified District Number 501, Topeka, Kansas, does proclaim January 2021 as awesome. I added that part, School Board Recognition Month of our Topeka Public Schools board members. With that in mind, this is an appreciation for your dedication, hard work as school board members who work to create an education system that meets the needs of both today's children and of tomorrow's children for the future. We thank you. With that recognition for our school board members, We often stop when it's a student if they wanted to make a comment. Now, you guys have comments at the end of your meeting as well, but I will stop and see if you wanted to make any comment before we acknowledge our law enforcement staff, knowing that, again, you have that comment time at the end. Dr. Mickelson?
Just want to thank you and your administrative staff and all the principals and the students and faculty out in the district for recognizing our contribution, as small as it may seem, to the success of our students. We do have their success as our primary goal, and this has been a difficult year, especially for new board members. It's been a terrible year, truthfully. The fun will happen when we're all vaccinated. Trust me, it will get better. But thank you for recognizing us and our small contribution to the success of our students and district.
Thank you, Dr. Mickelson. And, you know, we have several individuals, Ms. Abe, Ms. Bruno, Mr. Bruno, we just have several people just from the community that are here in celebration of you this evening. So while they may be quiet in the background, know that you have a number of community supporters that are just here to share how much we love you. For our principals, as they are on social media, they're posting right now, you know, just things about how much they appreciate you. And so look forward to reading those later after the meeting. It also, last weekend was Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. And man, they're gonna feel quite appreciated. One of the things that we are starting to do is celebrating our essential workers. So the drum line will be playing for them at Topeka High. They're waiting for another warm day. Today was one, but tomorrow won't be. And so sometime later next week, they'll be playing for them. The law enforcement officials will get a chance to go there, get actual certificates in person. Normally, they would be at the meeting and they would talk a little bit. Since this is virtual, I'm going to stop there, and we have a 1-minute slideshow so they can each introduce themselves and tell you their years of service virtually.
My name is Chief Ron Generette. I'm been at Topeka Public Schools for about 3 years.
I'm Captain Charlie McCray. I've been with Topeka Public Schools for 10 years.
My name is Kelly Roberts. I'm a sergeant. I've got 37 years of law enforcement experience.
Jacob Hout. I'm the sergeant, 10 years of experience, and I'm stationed at Topeka High School.
My name is Jeremy Lightoff. I'm the coordinator at Topeka West, and I've been with Topeka Public Schools Police Department for 7 years.
Sergeant Gary Williams at Highland Park High School. I've got 6.5 years with TPS Police.
Louis Cortez, Officer Louis Cortez with Topeka Public School. I'm assigned at Oak Street Academy. I've been working for Topeka Public Schools for the last 3 years.
Anthony Obregon, Officer, Topeka Public Schools. Have 37 years law enforcement experience.
My name is Officer Dave Thomas. I've been with Topeka Public Schools for 2.5 years now.
My name is Officer Jack Reynolds. I'm at Topeka West High School. I've been with Topeka Public Schools for going on 6 years.
I'm Travis Adams. I've been with Topeka Public Schools for 2 years.
I'm Officer Megan Kirby. I work over at Jardine Elementary in the JAG program. I've been with Topeka Public Schools for almost 3 years now.
I'm Anna Escalante, police officer. I work at Capital City High School.
Douglas Miller. I started with Topeka Public Schools Police in November of the 16th of 2020.
Austin McKeithen. I'm an officer at TPS Police. I started about 2 months ago.
So yeah, from 2 months to decades. And with that, our chief is on with us if you have a question for him. Now, they also have a proclamation, but we're going to be reading that and giving them their certificates. We may read the first and last couple sentences here, but we're going to read that again at Topeka High when we do have their performance. The first couple of sentences, and then I'll turn it over to Chief Generette if you have a question or two for him. With this proclamation, and I'm sorry, Mr. Robbins, did you want to take this proclamation on, or sir, are you okay with me proceeding?
I'm fine with you proceeding, Dr. Anderson.
All right, thank you. Our Deputy Superintendent does oversee our Topeka Public Schools Police Department. Whereas Topeka Public Schools proudly joins citizens across our nation to celebrate National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day, which was founded to thank all law enforcement officers across the country. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Topeka Public Schools is recognizing and proclaims January 9th, 2021 as National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. And with that, again, we will be reading the proclamation. So if you, we'll give you the date. So if you happen to be driving down the street and want to honk or just get out, the drum line will be playing for them a special piece. We'll also, it's encourage essential workers. And so there are about 150 staff members there. So we'll be encouraging them and the law enforcement that protects them. We'll also be giving each one of those law enforcement officials their certificate and a small gift of appreciation. We thank you, Chief, and all of your staff for keeping us safe and doing it with a smile and sometimes with a Santa suit and everything else that you need to do to bring love and kindness to our young people. Are there any questions, Dr. Mickelson, for Chief Jeanneret?
Again, I can't see any or all of the faces, so if anyone has a question, just speak up or comment. I have one, and Chief Jeanneret, if you could just share with us the training that your officers undergo when they're first hired, so that they're able to capably perform their duties.
Well, many of our officers are veterans that are retired from Topeka Police or other agencies. The brand new officers like Austin will go to KLETC, to the police academy. And then every year we have our 40 hours of in-service, and we cover all kinds of issues in that. And then we train throughout the year. We have a training program for new officers. They'll ride with an officer, and we have a officer checklist that we go over and make sure that we show them everything that they need to know. And we have several documents in there that they'll need. And that's kind of the training program we have.
How long is the training program with the KL, whatever, I didn't catch all the
Law Enforcement Training Center.
Yeah, how long is that?
It's a 10 to 12 weeks, because he goes January 25th and he graduates April 20th.
Okay.
So
very extensive then.
Yes.
Well, we just want to thank you and your team for helping keep our students and facilities safe and conducive to learning. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I had a question. I've not really thought about what your experience has been like during this this school year during the pandemic.
It's been hard on the officers because they miss the student interaction. That's what we're all here for, to build relationships and bonds and help students. So it's been a little tough. We've been a little bit down, but we understand it's COVID, and that's the way things are. It was great to have that 2 weeks with the students back in the building. That lifted everyone's spirits. So hopefully, they'll be able to come back pretty soon.
Mr. Campbell, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. As any profession has celebrations and challenges. So my question is, just in this position in general, what's an example of something that you celebrate, and what's an example of a challenge? And thank you so much also for everything you're doing.
Oh, thank you. We have wonderful support from Dr. Anderson and Mr. Robbins, so we're very blessed there. Challenges for me was just, learning the chief's role. Really haven't had a lot, other than the COVID, just not being around the students. That's been a big challenge. And at the games too, there's no fans, there's not very many students there, so we miss all that, but we understand too. So
this is Rich Bonebrake. It's my understanding that the officers frequently help the social workers with a lot of domestic and personal issues of the students. It's not just any enforcement or bullying, but a lot of social issues that the police input has been just absolutely necessary.
Yes, sir, they do. They go out with the social workers and do home visits. When the social workers tell us of a student that may be struggling or would like to talk to a police officer, we'll go visit them at the school. We actually had an opportunity to do that for a young man during that 2-week time frame who is thinking about becoming a police officer. So some of the officers went over there and gave him some junior police badges and spoke with him. So that's the kind of things we really like to do and we really enjoy about the job.
Very good.
Do we still have a pathway at TCALC for law enforcement?
Yes, sir. We sure do.
Yeah, good. Are there other questions for Chief Generette?
This is Sue Bowley. And so I was wondering how much in the area of mental health training is also taken on besides just the police academy?
A lot of the officers have been through the full CIT, the 40-hour CIT course. I would like to, after some restrictions are lifted due to the pandemic, I would like to get the full CIT course, get all the officers through that. We're looking into a mental health first aid class right now. It's an 8-hour class. I've been through the CIT course, the CIT for veterans, an advanced CIT course. So yes, we do some of that training for sure.
Thank you for all you do. Working in school buildings and seeing the presence of the officers there and the relationships they built with kids, and how much the kids, particularly in elementary, just respect when you come through. They just want to fist bump you and whatever they can to get your attention. And so I just really appreciate that. And I had a really good time watching that little elf going through Topeka West over the holidays. Too bad he had to disappear back into the jar or whatever.
Well, again, we thank you, Chief Generette. Mr. Robbins, do you have any final word you'd like to say? And this does conclude our highlights.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. I just want to say that, you know, we have a very professional group of law enforcement officers. You had a chance during the introductions to see just not only how much time they have with Topeka Public Schools, but how much time they have in law enforcement, period. I appreciate Dr. Bonebreak's question because the chief had a chance to share email commendation that they just received within the past few days, highlighting the difference that a couple officers made in the life of a young man who was struggling one day and just changed everything by him having a chance to interact with officers because he's interested because of them in becoming a police officer himself. So not only do they provide a safe and secure environment for students and staff across the district, but they also are very helpful in us fulfilling our educational mission for our kids. So really want to thank them for the job that they do each and every day.
Again, thank you so much, Chief Generette. And that was, you got to leave it to an educator to make us smile talking about the elf at the end. So a police department that does all things. We look forward to celebrating you in the next week or two at Topeka High with the drumline, and also encouraging all of our essential workers that are at Topeka High that we all get a chance to see and that you protect. I'll turn it back on over to Dr. Mickelson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Next on the agenda is public communications. It's my understanding we have one person, and that Jordan Miller, who I have seen on my screen, so I think she's here, and if she unmutes herself, Ms. Miller, is you prepared to speak? I just have a couple of instructions I'd like to share. Please come and state your name and address for the board or for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the board. We ask that your remarks to the board be respectful. If you should have a complaint against a specific employee, we ask that you submit your written complaint to the superintendent. If the complaint is against the superintendent, please address your written complaint to either me as board president or the clerk of the board. Thank you. Ms. Miller, are you prepared here? Looks like you're unmuted and ready to go. So.
Yes, sir, I am. My name is Jordan Miller. My address is 1171 Southwest Garfield. I am a mother of 5 children who attend 501. I have 1 student that attends Loman Hill and 4 students that attend Randolph. I come to you guys this evening to talk about the hardships that families and students face with remote learning. With 5 kids, we are expected to do general education classroom, special education, PE, music, counselor, speech therapy, and occupational therapy. That is 68 Zooms per week for our family. My husband and I collectively work 150 hours a week. Sorry. We struggle to find people to watch our children, people that we trust. And it has put a financial burden on our family as well, having to pay for out-of-pocket daycare costs that we previously did not have to pay for. My concern with not only for our family and our children, but as other family and children as well, is the lack of emotional, mental, and social support that we are getting from our schools in general. Our children need stability and they need routine. I do understand that we are in the middle of a pandemic, but I also ask the board to understand that remote learning is not the best option for everybody. I understand that there's a staffing issue, and I do believe that there are ways to work around that. I just ask to have more understanding, more compassion, and more routine given to these children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller.
Yes, sir.
Next on the agenda is business by consent. So we'll entertain a motion to take care of that.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the items of business by consent as presented and authorize the board president or superintendent to sign the special project and purchasing contracts for and on behalf of the board.
Thank you, Reverend Williams. We have a motion to approve business by consent. Is there any, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart Campbell. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I just, this is Lalo Munoz. I just wanted to highlight a donation to McEachran, I believe, from Brooke.
Brooke Leahy, I think is, yeah.
Can you hear me? Just wanted to highlight a contribution to McEachran and just highlight the generous, support of our local schools and thank her for that.
I agree. Thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Munoz. Any other discussion? I don't hear any, so I think we're ready to vote, either online or verbally if you prefer.
Mrs. Bowley votes aye.
Thank you.
Dr. Brombrick has raised his hand. Ms. Lister?
Thank you. Mrs. Stewart Campbell? Is there an aye?
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. All votes are in and motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mrs. Lister. Next is superintendent's report.
All right, as we get started, we always add down a superintendent's update. Much of tonight will be talked, we'll be turning it over to Mr. Minke to have conversation. But for our update tonight, it is our first initial part of remote learning. And we also have our superintendent's advisory that have met, and you do have the athletic update that was sent to you. And so on behalf of these Superintendent's Student Advisory, Kelm Lear, and you may remember him because he was a previous Senior of the Month. He'll be sharing a request on their behalf. And those are really our only updates, and we'll turn it over to Mr. Minky. So for today, we always have principals with us, and we happen to have Ms. Sondrager and Mrs. Wells-Martin. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Wells-Martin. It's perfect that Ms. Miller is here this evening as well. I believe Mrs. Martin has had some dialogue with her, so she's going to talk a little bit about some opportunities available, and Ms. Martin may have brought either a student or parent or teacher with her, as principals generally do at these meetings. I'll turn it over to Ms. Wells-Martin.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Anderson. We started remote learning, and I will have to say that despite the bumps that we've had with remote learning before, we just continue to get better and better at something we never thought we'd have to be good at. Our teachers have allowed parents to do less Zooms if that is needed for their family, and to organize those that are most beneficial for their students while still allowing that student to do the work at hand. Teachers have been creative. We have small pockets of kiddos who are coming to school to receive services and to receive the care that they need if that becomes necessary. So with that being said, I did bring someone with me tonight, and it's Mrs. Kate Cooley. She's a parent at Randolph, and she has a unique perspective. She has a kindergartner and a fourth grader, the cutest little girls you'll ever see. And she's also our PTO president. So she's been deeply involved in Randolph. And I'd like to turn it over to her to give a parent perspective of how remote has gone for her during this time.
Thank you for that introduction. Like she said, I have a fourth grader and a kindergartner. I think it goes without saying that both my girls and myself would far prefer being in person. I'm juggling working from home while getting them, on their Zooms. My fourth grader is pretty self-sufficient at this point and has fallen into a groove. I sometimes catch her early in the morning without reminding her she's already on Seesaw working on her activities for the day. She does also step in and help our kindergartner a little bit when I'm not available to do that. But like I said, I'm still working from home, so it is a lot to juggle, but we're finding our groove. We're kind of getting into a routine, and, it's also great that teachers and administration are readily available if we do have questions or if something seems off. So that's, if anyone has any questions, or that's pretty much what I have to share tonight.
Thank you for being a PTO president. And that's the first thing, which means you're probably on DCAC and provide support in a variety of other ways. And so with that, so here's where we are right now. I've asked every principal to have some level of small group opportunities. As everyone knows, our desire is to be in school. We know that our board supports in-person learning consecutively. The full board supports it for if we're in the orange rating, and we're looking forward to being in that orange rating so we can have an extended period of learning. But until such time, we thank you for graciously allowing the autonomy to have those 2 weeks, because we were able to get kids computers who they broke them or lost the cord or whatever in November or December. So we were able to get them that. We were able to set up appointments for families. We were able to create small groups. We were even able to plan a mini mid-year graduation ceremony for the seniors that are ready to graduate in February. So thank you for allowing us to do that. We're anxious to see our young people again. In the meantime, I've asked principals to create opportunity. And so parents such as Ms. Miller and others have, if they share they have the need, then the principal is supposed to share with them that here are ways to be able to access the school. So counselors, even this evening, I learned from Ms. Sharp that there are actually counselors and social workers meeting with families tonight. And so we have counselors and social workers doing that after hours, after parents are home. Sometimes it's even family counseling. And then we also have our traditional groups occurring. Some schools, the entire special needs population, for example, at Cap City, is being served the full time, as long as they have the staff to do that, although we are in the red. Avondale West, which, as you know, students that have been in juvenile detention or students that have significant mental health and other social behavioral needs have continued in that space. Additionally, TCALC, which was already small groups, 2 students in some cases or 3. But I guess every principal, if there's a parent that has a need that really needs some added support, while we may not be able to be in the orange yet, certainly being able to address small groups where possible, we are doing everything we can to do that. So we still encourage for that to continue. Ms. Morrissey as well on her end throughout the high school. She even had students meeting today, and I know because one of the students shared she had to get to a meeting because they're planning, the studio was planning all the events occurring at their building. So I thank all the principals for doing all they can to provide that, and the board for giving us the opportunity to provide those services as well. Pine Ridge is also serving families fully. So the Pine Ridge families, instead of being on remote for a short period of time, they all can just walk right on over to Pine Ridge because it's right in the housing units. And they can instead have the remote at the school, and the teachers are coming in for that. And so we look forward to seeing our kids again soon. And again, thank you for the 2-week opportunity that we were able to have. With that update concluding, we also have an update on our students. The Acacia did approve under Acacia's rules to be able to have 4 spectators in the audience should a board choose to do that. Right now, we have not allowed any spectators in for athletics. However, the students, and Mr. Lear will speak to this, really shared that, not having a parent, especially if it's your senior year, and I would propose at least 2 parents, because if a student hurts themselves, if they injure themselves, they certainly need a ride to the game sometimes and home, and they don't want to necessarily ride on a bus. And so being able to socially distance, our principals certainly feel as though they can socially distance with 2 parents in a large auditorium and allow for those families to at least see this final portion of the semester. I support that recommendation. And Mr. Lear, on behalf of the students, it's great to bring a student voice. Normally, the superintendent's advisory will speak at least once. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Lear to make a comment about that on behalf of the student superintendent advisory.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Anderson. After speaking with multiple people on the Superintendent Student Advisory Board, as well as numerous athletes, we feel that it is doable for each of the 3 high schools, Topeka West, Highland Park, and Topeka High School, to allow 2 parents for each athlete to attend the games, given that the county is allowing for no more than 100 participants in it. And when you consider how all the athletes, the refs, the coaches, and then 2 parents per athlete, we would never meet that number. And so I would just like to say I really appreciate the board reconsidering this matter. And so thank you for your time.
So and I'll see if Mrs. Morrissey has anything to add, but our students would like to have just their parents attend. So, no more than 2 at this point, but if at a minimum, having 2 parents attend, particularly if they're seniors. Zoe Carroll was supposed to be here tonight. She turned 18 tonight. And she said, well, she turned 18 yesterday, but she had a softball game and a basketball game. So they're celebrating her tonight. So on behalf of the board, y'all just sent her flowers. So she just got those delivered this evening, wishing her a happy 18th. And so as Ms. Carroll brought up this issue as well, she's a senior. She plays 2 sports. Her parents haven't been to any of her games, and they happen to be educators, both parents, for Topeka Public Schools. So Ms. Morrissey, is there any final item you want to add very briefly?
I would just confirm what Kelm has shared and what Dr. Anderson has shared, which is that we are able to stay under the county guidelines. We were a little creative with the other 2 schools because they're under one roof, but we can ensure that both gyms are treated as individual spaces. Obviously here I have a divided space already because they aren't connected, and we can follow the guidelines that you have asked us to and still allow those 2 parents in a safe way.
So with that, we're going to open this up to questions and see if there's a consensus. We'll probably call you by name since you're on virtual. Dr. Mickelson, I'll turn it over to you to, Ms. Boley, I think has her hand up.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ms. Boley.
Well, does this open up spectators' parents also coming to our games at the same time, which would crowd the gyms more?
That has not been the case the places we've gone, Ms. Boley. Typically there are no outside. So when I went to Hayden, for example, they allow parents in, but we weren't allowed to have anybody there. So there are many places that are only doing it for their own students.
Thank you.
I
Are there any
move,
other questions, Dr. Bombrick?
I move we allow 2 parents for each participant.
Well, Dr. Bonebrake beat me to the punch.
So you second, Reverend
So
Williams?
is that a second?
I'm second it.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any other discussion?
It's good. Just today, I was talking with a 9th grade basketball player from Topeka West, and he was telling me about his game tonight and how much he wished his parents could go. And I was, so yeah, I'm in favor, yes.
So I don't want to throw anything on this. I totally agree, but over the summer or over tennis season, I just saw parents supporting their kids without masks and congregating. So I would hope Miss Morrissey and the rest of the coaches, et cetera, would be very strict about doing that, because I mean, we are way worse now than we were in the spring. So, but I totally agree. Parents should be seeing their kids.
I would, if I can add, it's 2 adults, because in some cases there's a guardian or someone else important. So it's 2 adults was the wording that we discussed with the SUPES Council. And Dr. Morrison, I agree. I have gone in stands even back in football, and I have not had any issue with parents and people not willing to put their masks on. And I can tell you, I would graciously escort them out if they refuse to do that. I just don't see that happening. I really don't. People have been wonderful. So noted.
I think from the shake of head, or do we need to have a vote, I assume? We've got a motion in a second to approve. I think Reverend Williams, you're my parliamentarian.
And if I could ask Ms. Cope, are you okay with the voting, since it was motioned and seconded, voting for clarity, since we are online and some people can't see?
Yeah, I don't know that it is required, but it's certainly acceptable. So if they would like to make a motion in a second, then certainly can go right ahead.
Thank you. Since they've motioned it in second, Dr. Mickelson, are you okay with Ms. Lister calling for the vote?
Yes,
Ms. Lister?
Yes. Can everybody tell me their vote, please? I can't put it up on the screen because.
Reverend Williams, your vote?
Yes.
Please.
All right.
Dr. Bonebrake?
Aye.
Mr. Munoz?
No.
Mrs. Bully? You're on mute, Mrs. Bully.
Ms. Boley?
Aye.
Yes.
Dr. Morrison?
Aye.
Ms. Stewart Campbell?
Yes, aye.
And I also vote aye.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lear, for your presentation tonight on representing the Superintendent's Council. Have you decided on a college yet? Last time, I think you're undecided.
I am still undecided. I'm waiting to hear from 2 more out-of-state schools.
Well, keep us informed, would you please?
Will do.
Thank you.
All right, with that, those are all of our updates. And as you all may remember, Mr. Lear may be a board member one day, as he, I think, was interested in poli-sci a little bit. So I'll turn it back over to Dr. Mickelson. Is that right, Mr. Lear? That's what we thought. It was a few months ago when you mentioned that. All right, so we're going to turn it over to Dr. Mickelson. Have a good rest of your evening, Mr. Lear. And those are all of the updates that I have for you.
I have expansion of mobile food pantry sites on my agenda.
And you did a great job of keeping me on target, and you are correct. And those are all of my updates. However, that next topic is down right before Mr. Minke. And so, we would like to expand our food sites, especially right now since we're in remote. I think it's important that we provide as many of those around the city as possible. Therefore, we already have Jardine, we have Cap City as a mobile site. And with those having been open the last 5 years, we'd like to establish another one. So our awesome assistant principal from Robinson, he's on with us, Mr. Lefford. He really put together the entire proposal. He's here to answer questions if you have them. But the proposal thus far that was sent to Dr. Gray, and Dr. Gray has met with harvesters, is for them to have one of those off weeks in which we currently don't have a food pantry open, so a parent could actually go the first weekend to one place, the second weekend to another place, and then the next weekend to another place. So each weekend they could potentially have access. Dr. Gray, is there anything I left out that you'd like to add to that in terms of the actual day and when it might start?
Yes, Dr. Anderson, and thank you. As we do understand, this food pantry will start on February 5th. That will be a Friday, February 5th, and it will be from 4 to 5. So again, this will open up another opportunity for parents around our community to be able to access various food resources.
And so it'll start pending board being just giving me a consensus of the go ahead. I assume you probably wouldn't have a problem with it, but we wanted to make sure to share it with you. And then if there's a question for Mr. Lefford, he is here to answer that since he really spearheaded this piece. And we thank him as a new assistant principal for us for starting that. He's also a foster parent too in the community. And he's just doing a tremendous job with the student service realm, and we do appreciate it.
I have a quick question for Mr. Leffert, and just curious to know how many people are served typically in a typical session.
Yeah, so we met with harvesters just this past week and walked the site. They are anticipating that we will start with approximately 150 families that we'll serve. So we covered the logistics with them. We had the pleasure of observing Mr. Hare at Jardine Middle School, and they serve approximately that many families as well. And so that's what we're anticipating right now.
And how much food is distributed typically in a family?
So it really depends. What we're looking at right now, I mean, generally they have some sort of protein, fresh vegetables, and then the ones that I've observed, it kind of varies on what's been donated. And so they can't guarantee any type of food, but there is just a great variety of food, and a substantial amount is given to each family. If you haven't had the opportunity to watch a mobile food pantry in action, it's 6-7 full pallets of food that's given away in less than an hour a lot of times.
And who staffs the delivery of the food?
So they deliver the food on the pallets, and then we will have volunteers. We have a mental health team who helped me spearhead this, and they are all volunteering. And then as tonight, if we get a consensus, we're going to open it up for additional volunteers, and our staff likely would stay to go ahead and volunteer for that as well.
Right. Are there any other questions for Mr. Hare, Mr. Leffert?
And since Mr. Hare is here, Mr. Hare, what is the day of the week? So the first Friday will be Robinson. Mr. Hare, when is your pantry? And then Dr. Gray, just remind us when Cap City is. Mr. Hare?
Right, we do the second Saturday of every month, and we do all 12 months of the year, even through the winter months. And just to kind of share the need of this, we end up with like 12,000 pounds of every Saturday, and we give that out. People get lots of food. But we start at 9 in the morning, and the earliest families start showing up at 5:30 a.m. in line. And that's really why we do this every week, because they get there at 5:30 in the morning to get food from us, and wait 3.5 hours.
So you can see why opening another site is desirable, and it is certainly a need. So that means you'll have the first Friday of every month. Unless there's a concern with us proceeding forward, the first Friday would be at Robinson. The second Saturday would be at Mr. Hare's site. And then Dr. Gray, Cap City, is that the last Saturday or the third Saturday? Friday.
I think it's I'll have to look again. I think it's the fourth Friday.
And the fourth Friday is Cap City in the morning as well. So that gives people almost every weekend to be covered. So do we have a consensus from the board to proceed forward? All right, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Leffert, for taking the initiative to get this started so quickly. This is awesome, and it's definitely a need, especially now in this space that we're in.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Anderson.
I believe that really is all, Dr. Mickelson, from me. And so I'm going to turn it back on over to you, sir.
I think it is too, at least on my agenda. We have one action item, and that's approval of the proposed 2021-22 calendar that we were briefed on by Mrs. Wallace last week. Are there any questions for Mrs. Wallace before we entertain a motion to approve that?
Yeah, I had a question in terms of how it compares to our most recent calendar year.
So,
Ms. Wallace?
yes, so compared to our current calendar, it's very different because we revised based on the pandemic and our pushback of starting school until the 1st of September. But prior to that, it falls in line and with all of our calendars for the last 5 years since I've been leading the academic calendar committee. The requirements and the parameters are the same, even prior to my starting to do this committee.
And just a reminder, the calendar committee creates a couple different calendars and you put that up for a vote. That's correct, right?
Correct. So yes, NEA, Topeka Public Schools, we collaborate on this committee. Actually, the president and I chair it, and we come up with multiple calendars, and generally 2 are put out to vote. This calendar was voted on with, and the other calendar, it was a 70-30 vote. So 70% of the teachers and staff, because it classified staff also voted. So 70% of the staff who voted voted for this calendar.
And just a reminder, this calendar we're voting on tonight, the spring break is aligned with the Board of Regents spring break, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Are there any other questions for Mrs. Wallace before we entertain a motion to approve this calendar? I don't hear any, so we'll entertain that motion.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the 2021-2022 school calendar as presented.
Thank you, Reverend Williams. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Bonebrake. A motion and a second to approve the proposed calendar. I think any other discussion on it? I guess we discussed it already. I don't hear any, so we're ready to vote. Mrs. Lister.
All right, the vote is open.
Bonebrake, aye.
Foley, aye.
Thank you. Mrs. Stewart Campbell?
Yes, I'm doing a thumbs up, but maybe you can't see it.
I see. Sorry. Thank you. All votes are in and it carries unanimously.
Thank you. Next discussion item on changing the retirement savings paradigm for Topeka Public Schools. Mr. Menke, I think you're front and center on this one.
All right, I think Mr. Menke's taking himself off of mute or having a little bit of technical difficulty. There you go. We'll turn it over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Anderson. Hello. First of all, I appreciate your attention and patience. Let's get right to work. This evening, we will dig deeper into employee retirement savings plans and the district's role as the employer plan sponsor. After our presentation, we will address as many questions and comments as time allows. The board establishes for all employees a fringe or voluntary benefits program. The board approves the provider for each qualified benefit offered. The district administers 15 employee benefit programs funded through employer contributions and employee salary deferrals. Of those 15 benefit programs, only one functions on a multi-vendor platform. Currently, Topeka Public Schools offers its employees pre-tax retirement savings accounts under a multi-vendor platform. The existing system structure provides limited assistance for employees to compare plans, investment fees, and measure performance. The multi-vendor platform often proves to be insufficient to the district when functioning as the employer plan sponsor and fiduciary. I'm going to turn our presentation over now to Jim Reardon and Nick Newkirk with Proactive Capital, and then we will hear a few brief comments on communication strategy and implementation from representatives of Horace Mann, who we would suggest are very capable of providing a robust single vendor retirement savings platform. Proactive was engaged over a year ago to conduct a study of retirement savings plans, specifically employer-sponsored public school plans. Proactive Capital is not a provider of governmental retirement plans. Jim is a graduate of Kansas State University in Washburn Law and holds Series 7, 63, and 66 security licenses, as well as a certified financial planner designation. Nick, Proactive Capital CEO, holds Series 7 and 66 security licenses and is a registered investment advisor. Jim, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mankey, and thank you, board members. I also want to point out that Nick Newkirk, who is the CEO of our company and the director of the project, I served as the manager of the project. Nick is here with me as well, in case we have questions. So I'll launch right into it. Gary tells me time is of the essence, and it's really to your credit that you're willing to take this up with everything that you folks have on your plate. So I'll be very brief. As the slide indicates, that the New York Times actually did two studies, one in 2016 and one in a series of articles in 2018 talking about 403B plans and how detrimental they are compared to other retirement type plans. Next slide, please. So the major thing, of course, is the fees and expenses in these plans. The Wagner Group identified at least 8 possible fee types that are found in these plans, and they take a lot of searching. Sometimes the documents are over 100 pages long, and finding all of the hidden fees can be quite a chore. Most of the fees come from variable annuities that have been characteristically offered in these programs for many, many years, until just recently, more recently, mutual funds have been able to be offered. The annuities are primarily variable annuities, and they will often have fees of 2.5% to 3% or more. Next slide, please. So what makes 403B plans different from 401k plans is that the 403B plans are sold directly to the individual educators. It's their marketing channels are different. In a 401k plan, employers are the ones who oversee the plan. They're the ones who are sold the plan. They have the capacity to vet the vendors and the investment offerings, and they select just one plan. The employers are able to leverage the critical mass of all the employees who are involved in the program, and that allows them to negotiate lower fees and better service levels. In 403B plans, they're sold directly to the individual educators. That's one of the reasons why the costs are higher, and they don't have the advantage of consolidation nor the benefit of oversight. And the important thing is these plans fly under the ERISA radar, so there's really nobody minding the store when it comes to K through 12 employees. Next slide, please. So currently there are 12 current vendors in the program. You will notice as you look down this list that 9 out of the 12 are annuity companies, and 3 are other mutual funds, and Aspire is an investor platform. Next slide, please. You'll find that we're pretty consistent with research that's been done that most of these programs are provided by annuity vendors, and that's one of the reasons for the high cost of these plans. In the Topeka Public Schools plan, it's really not a plan. It's a collection of different products, and so it's very hard to get your arms around, and that's one of the reasons why it's very hard for people to do something, because they don't know where to start. So we started with a kind of a loose affiliated committee, which included Mr. Menke and Shawnette Mansfield and Nick and myself. And it was our mission to analyze the existing service model, to look at all the products, all the service providers, analyze the alternatives to the current K through 12 service models, and develop evaluation criteria and program goals, and recommend a new paradigm. Next slide. So with that, to make a long story short, and by the way, I think all of you have been furnished a 25-page report that we did in 8 addendums, so I'm not going to read those all tonight. In fact, there's some right here with 4 flaws that we found in the program. The choice of investment products is left up to the participant, and that results in a plethora of products, and pricing structures, and sales practices. Studies show that when people are given too many choices, they become overwhelmed, and so it's hard to make decisions. That accounts for some of the low participation rate. The model doesn't allow plan sponsors to aggregate assets to negotiate appropriate pricing levels, and it really creates a vacuum of reliable financial education to prepare participants for retirement. Mr. Menke calls them the 4 flat tires. In this, so ultimately, what came out of looking at those flaws then was a goal and a plan to move forward and determine what we're going to be looking for in a plan to serve the USD 501. And so the goal is to relieve the administrative burden for USD 501 from 12 vendors to 1, instill the greatest degree of plan governance and program oversight. We can do that if we can get our arms around the program. Offer a fee structure that's simple, fair, and transparent. Provide a comprehensive and personal financial education experience. Provide appropriate and low-cost investment selections, and elevate the participation levels to meet reasonable institutional expectations. Next slide.
I'm muted, right?
So one of the first things we needed to do was to look at the critical mass. And according to a recent report from Fiscal Services, the total asset base is nearly $40 million. And that makes Topeka Public Schools one of the largest employers in Topeka, and certainly the total assets are sizable by Topeka metrics. Next slide. The participation level is a little over $1 million a year, which is quite a large contribution. And of that, the number of eligible participants is approximately 2,000. We have only 485 active participants currently, and out of those, 292 participants account for about 90% of the current contributions, making the 403B plan one of the most underutilized employee program types. Next slide. So one of the major solutions is the single vendor solution. And the whole idea is to collectively take advantage of pricing power and efficiencies. And that should result in lower fees, very competitive investments, and compliance-focused services. Next slide. So to move a single provider plan the move to a single provider plan is new only to public schools and some smaller nonprofits. Hospitals, institutions of higher education moved to that direction several years ago. Next slide. One of the things we wanted to do was to go to the existing providers to see if they had the ability to offer single vendor solutions, and we asked if they wanted to submit something, and AXA, Equivest, Thrivent responded with more competitive annuity offerings, and pretty much all the rest stayed with their current offerings. We found that the annuity products, with the exception of a couple of annuity companies, were individual solutions for a broad-based systemic need, and therefore the products they were recommending really didn't meet the goals of our that we had set. Next slide. VALIC was a little different. VALIC was acquired by AIG and their representatives. We met with them and they determined that their best opportunity was to join with the CDS Retirement Trust in presenting a more competitive single provider proposal, and we'll go into that very quickly very soon. Next slide. Horace Mann proposal is different as well. Although Horace Mann is an insurance and annuity company, their proposal featured no-load mutual funds and was really designed for the single vendor market. It met the stated goals of the committee, and we'll describe it more fully. Next slide. The consortium concept is new, and it's the latest trend in single vendor solutions. There are currently 2 consortium type programs being offered to the K through 12 in the state of Kansas that we're aware of. A consortium is formed to collectively take advantage of that pricing power and efficiencies that we mentioned. And we're going to take a look at both of those. Next slide. So the first one is called the SDAC consortium. The SDAC is, and some of you may know this organization, the Educational Services and Staff Development Association of Central Kansas. They serve as a sponsor for this program and the administrator of it. And they take pride in the fact that no insurance company is involved. It was founded in 2008 by a gentleman with a company called Maritime. His name was Russ Lane, and it's quite an ingenious program. It's very hard to field a program of this type. And what we found was that the schools, there's about 40 schools, Kansas schools, that are using the program currently, another 5 in Nebraska. And they seem to be very enthusiastic about the program. We were impressed with the dedication of the former educators and that staffed the program, and the quality of the educational program was very impressive as well. And I know Mr. Menke actually sat in on one of those presentations and was impressed. Next slide. Now the problem with the program is simply the lack of critical mass. Even though they have 40 schools, they don't have any larger critical mass than you've got currently. Besides that, the operative structure is very complicated. And then also there's the vastness of the servicing area to do all the educational programs and to field the services. And so that all kind of resulted in the estimated fees running about 1.75%. And that's about what some of these people are paying, around 2% or so for their annuities and mutual funds. So there's really not much savings that could be accrued to the participants. And from our perspective, that made it a non-starter. Next slide. The second is the CDS Retirement Trust. The advantages are that there's 170 million in current assets. They're functioning in 2 states. Their hope is to go nationwide. In those 2 states, they are backed by very deep pockets of AIG, insurance company, and CBIZ, who manages the assets and provides regional advisory services. It offers some pretty good investment options, and the pricing is certainly much better than they were offered as when AIG was serving Topeka Public Schools as VALIC in the 403B multi-vendor market. Next slide. One of the issues that we found was the viability issue. They are aspiring to become national in scope, but it's currently only serving 2 states. It struggled to acquire Kansas participants and currently has none. The trust really has lost ground to the ASDAC consortium that's far more expensive program. And while promising, it has a very competitive price, which is 44, let's call it 45 basis points. That would be $45 on $1,000, plus the cost of the funds. It really hasn't proved that it's viable in Kansas at this time. So the one that we always thought was the standard bearer and the one that we thought we'd measure all other programs by is the CAPERS 457 plan. Next slide, please. And in the CAPERS 457 plan, it's already readily available to people, to school teachers. The CAPERS plan is an exception because of the sheer volume of people in it and the amount, the $1 billion that are in it. It's pretty much the low-cost leader, and it certainly has a very economical mutual fund platform, and is provided with Great West. Empower oversees the plan, and it's widely utilized throughout the state of Kansas. Next slide. The advantage, and by the way, the 457 plan is not a 403B plan, and there are differences, so it's important to understand those differences. And the main difference is that the CAPERS plan has in it. In the CAPERS plan, it's kind of really works well for do-it-yourselfers and savvy investors. They love the programs because it has so many different investment choices. Even has a stock brokerage window so that they can buy their favorite stocks and bonds. Administrative costs are quite low at $22 on $10,000 investment. That'd be one, yeah, it's $10,000 plus the cost of the fund choices. Next slide. It's slightly more favorable with withdrawal benefits, and in many ways it's certainly equal to or better than a 403B plan. A number of the K-12 school districts have begun to use the CAPERS 457 plan, but basically they supplement their existing 403B plans, and it's not, they don't use it as a single solution as we're proposing. Next slide. There is a drawback, and that is that CAPERS doesn't offer a 403B plan. It's not possible to do a direct rollover from a 403B plan to a 457 plan, so it's very complicated. It's much more complicated to, it requires the public schools would have to terminate their existing 403B plan. They'd have to compel all the participants to surrender their plans and participate and receive distributions, and either roll them out to IRAs or individually transfer them to a new CAPERS 457 plan. And all of that has to be done by the participant within 60 days or they will be penalized. And so that is probably, it creates 1099 problems tax-wise when they undertake that to do that. Next slide. So the strength of the CAPERS program is also its weakness. It's very big, and the school districts are really only one of many government constituents, and that means there be no specialized programs for teachers. Advisors stick to the basics of the two CAPERS plans. We found that there's very limited personal interaction and certainly no pats on the back for participating in a plan. No counseling on loan forgiveness or service pay plan or some of the other financial topics that we found that are common to the teaching profession that won't be answered in the advisors in this plan. Next slide. We were actually, to begin with, rather surprised to find that right under your nose is the Horace Mann program, and like the CAPERS 457 plan, it's very cost effective. The Horace Mann has been dedicated to the K through 12. We had a lot of problems in getting people to submit proposals for the K through 12 market. But that's their specialty. The company offers the experience and institutional capabilities of one of the most experienced retirement plan companies. Next slide. What we found was that it was very low cost in comparison to the other programs that we looked at. And the open architecture is something we appreciate as investment advisors. The investment platform has literally hundreds of institutional no-load funds from dozens of mutual fund companies. So it's very easy to build a very wide selection of very cost-effective funds that everybody will be pleased with. And the funds are selected for compliance purposes. The funds are selected by an independent third party. They're fee-only investment management firm like ours. And that's the only fee they get is serving as an advisor to the plan. And an interesting thing, the Horace Mann representatives are not compensated by commissions or fund fees, so they have no dog in the hunt as far as telling you which funds to use and driving you to funds that are not necessarily the best choices. Next slide. The Horace Mann program is called the Retirement Advantage, and what makes it stand out is the totality of it. Horace Mann proposes to offer both the 403B plan and the 457 plan. So you really get the best of both worlds and all the benefits of maximum contributions. The program includes the investment, it includes everything in it. Next slide. And not only will they enjoy two plans, those are often paired together for the maximum capabilities. And so it's natural to offer both plans. And the difference, of course, is personal on-site consultation and the customized communication programs that would result, we think, in greater participation. And it could give your employees an advantage in attracting your school, in attracting and retaining and rewarding employees. Next slide. And at 34 basis points, that's $34 per 10,000. Horace Mann compares very favorably with Capers, and that's impressive. And considering the depth of service that's being offered in the program. Next slide as we sum this up. So there is one drawback, and that's governance. Some of the other plans offered to buffer the sponsors from literally any kind of involvement and responsibility. In this case, the school would be required to monitor the service providers, retain governance in that respect, and then also make timely decisions from the data that's provided to them by the service providers, so that they ultimately control who provides the services and can receive information on a timely basis in regard to the programs. Finally, next slide, please. So our recommendation was, first of all, understand that the best plans aren't necessarily the cheapest. Low cost can be trumped by other considerations, including the educational needs of the participants, assumption of responsibilities, the quality of services, all those things. And we decided, frankly, that either plan meets the goals that we've established by the committee. And it should serve, either program should serve the needs of Topeka Public School participants very well. Next slide. And lastly, the decision actually gets down to the administrative choices of you folks in your role as plan sponsors. The new paradigm is going to assure that no matter what you do, that the supplemental program you're offering is going to be best in class. It's in terms of governance, educational programs, cost efficiencies, intelligent investment choices, participation, and certainly less burdensome by a long shot for the HR department. And it's very easily defensible from a regulatory perspective. So with that, I'll catch my breath. We'll be glad to answer any questions. That's right. We've got Horace Mann coming up, so I think they'll probably want to move into the role that Horace Mann would play, and then we'll all be available for questions after that.
Pat, you could go to that transition communication strategy slide. We have 3 folks with Horseman this evening. One is a well-known entity, Hillary Abbey, who has been a good partner with Topeka Public Schools for some time. Ralph Bruno and Peter Moore. So I think we're going to turn it over to Raphael Bruno, and he's going to whip through these last 3, really just kind of discussing so you can understand that communication at transition is attainable. And then again, as Mr. Reardon said, we would entertain absolutely any questions. And if you would direct the questions at me, I can kind of determine if they're a proactive question or a Horace Mann question. So go ahead, Ralph.
Thank you, Gary. And I just want to say thank you to everything that you all do for our children here at Horace Mann. We understand the value of education. And I have to say, I tip my hat. It's not an easy times you're all going through. So we do thank you as parents myself, specifically. So thank you for all that you're doing. And I always say this is your time, so please interrupt me. But I will say that a transition strategy, talk of communication is you can never over communicate. And I break it down to a 3-step process. Introducing us as the new provider, why we were chosen. We can define the process of helping individuals understand their current plan, their current accounts, and how it's going to be brought over to the Topeka Public Schools retirement plan, right? This is a branding. We want to brand it in your name. We're going to administer it. We are going to have our eyes on it. We're going to be accountable. We want to be fully accessible here at Horace Mann, but it's going to be branded in your colors. It's going to be for you. We want to show participants. We want to handhold them, educate them. We want to pique their interest and get them excited. Myself, one of the roles I play here at Horace Mann is I consider myself a national director of retirement excitement. I want to get people engaged. I want to get them on better to utilize the plan and how it can really be a powerful tool for them. We want to introduce everybody to how we're going to help them, the website. Obviously, Hillary has a great reputation in your district. You know, her and her staff, along with folks from Horace Mann, are going to be there to help usher this through. We're going to enroll. We're going to motivate people. We're going to promote the meetings, the education. We're going to show them how to use the tools, the retirement readiness tools, things that can help them make sound financial decisions. And beyond that, we want to make this a dialogue. This is not just a one-way street. It is a two-way street. So communication is really paramount in this, going both ways. We're going to invite their spouses to the meetings. We want them to understand what it is that is going to change and why it's changing for the better. Next slide, please. I call this my moving slide, really. This is a time frame, and I'm a little bit of a type A personality. We've all moved from one house to the other. Think of it just moving from your old houses into a new house, except here what we're going to do is we're going to outline process step by step, notify, work with you, keep you as fully engaged, Gary and his staff, as much as they want to be, or as hands-off as they'd like to be. But we will be doing all the heavy lifting. We'll pack the boxes. We're going to label the boxes. We're going to put them on the truck. We'll make sure the truck shows up. We'll move them into the new house. We'll have everything set up. We're going to educate along the way, and that's what we plan on doing. But all along the way, we're going to be accessible at every level. We'll be accountable for everything we do. And first and foremost, there's going to be a lot of communication along the way. And this is a timeline, a sample timeline. We can collaborate on it. We can adjust it. We can make it longer, shorter, however it needs to be. But this is what this is something we'd like to show everybody. And we do have the ability to show much more greater detail. Next slide, please. This is an employee communication timeline. I sat through the entire meeting, and I totally respect the amount of the way you communicate with everybody in the community. I tip my hat to that. I love it when you communicate. It's just, we want to make sure no stone is left unturned. We have the announcement letters. We're transition newsletters. We're going to brand everything, right? This is your branded. We want to roll this out in the best interest of the employees of your school district. We're going to have meetings. We're going to promote them. We're going to do virtual meetings. We have the capabilities to do broad-based virtual as well as scheduling groups of meetings at their time, at their convenience. We'll have as much as necessary, and again, with minimal disruption to the thing that they're doing the most, which is educating the children of the community. We don't want to take them away from that. We already know everything is hectic, but we will try to be as least invasive as possible during this time period. So with that, I'm going to stop here. I'll turn it back over to Gary. We're here for any questions. Thank you very much for the time. Again, we really appreciate it, and I enjoyed hearing everything you had to do for the community. It was really a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Raphael, and thank you, Dr. Anderson, for allowing us to do the presentation this evening. I know this isn't as fun as some of the other things, but boy, it's really important. I asked Mr. Gowan to play the same music as he did during the law enforcement appreciation, and he wouldn't do it. So I thought maybe that'd help us out. But would love to entertain any questions from leadership or board members. And if you could direct them to me, and I'll try to play traffic control. If it's a RFP analysis question, I'll fire to proactive. And if it's a single vendor question, we'll fire over to Horace Mann. So feel free.
Go ahead, Dr. Morrison.
I have a little bit of experience with this being in our business. Dr. Bonebrake does too. We had to find vendors for our employees, and we found some things that would be very helpful. And so the things that you've gone over on the slides are answering most of the questions. But I found that a very helpful thing, of course, low fees, you always want that, and there always are hidden fees. And we wanted to make sure when we found somebody that there weren't any hidden fees, number one. Two, it's kind of depressing that only 25 or 24% are participating in this when it would be a very good thing, and starting young would be very good. So communication not only to the individuals that are already members or investing, but also communication with the rest, the 75% that aren't investing. And then the other thing is education. All of the people need to be, I mean, we're not investors. I'm not an investor, but I need to know what's going on if I'm going to do that. And so not only do you educate at the beginning, but you need to meet multiple times, maybe through the year, to say what's going on and what their investments are doing and what they should do. So those are the things that I think are very important. And this looks like a pretty good plan. So if anybody wants to comment about those things, that would be good.
Yeah, so I'd like to say, Mr. Mackey, you said this isn't very exciting. Young me would have thought this was not exciting. And younger teacher, when I first started teaching, I really wish somebody had been educating me about the need to invest. And I regret that. But not to blame somebody else, but what I'm hearing is that we would, if going with this, we would be educating our teachers about the importance of investing starting young, and how I wish I had had that back when I first started teaching. So I have more to say, but I'm going to stop for the moment.
And we appreciate that. And one of the onuses, and Jim Reardon, Nick Newkirk at Proactive, really what started driving this over a year ago. We had some unhappy customers, right, in my office, and it is messy, our current program. And what we really need are, and I love what you said, Dr. Morrison, most of us aren't investors, we're savers, right? Most of us are savers. But our new teachers, and to your point, Ms. Campbell, particularly the ones that began their service with TPS in 2015, their capers retirement is going to look a whole lot different, than ours, Miss Bowley, us tier 1 folks. And what those young folks need to understand is their capers retirement plan is a cash basis plan. We're not going to take your highest 3 paid years and calculate your lifetime benefit. We're going to calculate your benefit based on what you were able to save, and that looks a lot different. A tier 3 retiree is going to look a lot different than a tier 1 retiree who began their service, early to mid 80s. So certainly our current plan, as Jim had mentioned, I think it has 4 flat tires, but we sure want to make it better. There's been a lot of thought, as you can see, a lot of analysis went into this. We wanted external eyes on this. I wanted somebody looking at this that wasn't going to submit an offer for selling governmental retirement plans. And I really think that added fidelity to what the data and analysis that Mr. Reardon and Mr. Newcart did, and also adds a lot of credibility to their recommendations.
This is Bonebreak. I'd like to know a couple of things. One, the low participation rate. I would suspect it's because the salary is high, but I'd like to know who are the ones participating. My suspicion is it's the higher administration, people with higher salaries, or they are married to a high earner. And secondly, was TIAA considered? Because it's one of the largest state employee, public employee investor managers.
So I'll let Mr. Reardon answer that question.
They were one of the first that we went to. We have a longstanding appreciation for the services that TIA provides. We had worked with a private institution, educational institution, using TIA. The Regent schools use TIA, and they passed. They don't really like to work the K through 12 market, and just wasn't critical mass enough to attract their interest. And we also checked with several other providers, and we found that there's just not a large number of them yet that provide them for provide institutional 403Bs that are eager at this point to get into the K through 12 market. And we're very fortunate to find really, 2 outstanding companies that extend their opportunity to do that.
Meaning Capers and Horace Mann?
Yes.
2 companies.
Dr. Bonebreak, I could address also why I think more people aren't participating. As a former TPS teacher myself, I think it was just not being really aware of what all the choices were, and then seeing what the choices were, being overwhelmed, and then having analysis paralysis. So, but it sounds like with this plan, that's not going to be an issue. Just if we can just really educate our teachers about, here it is, here's how much more you can save, because we know that with capers and Social Security, that's not enough for retirement. So I really love the idea of being able to educate our staff more about another option that is easy to understand, and that we're going to take care of our staff.
The one thing I would add, Dr. Bonebreak, in terms of the mix of savers in our current plan, the 24%, it's really not heavily weighted on the administrative end, as you might think. It's really more age driven. Our more middle-aged to, within 10 years of retirement are the folks that are thinking about that. part of the other reasoning I really think is and I think you kind of hit on it, many of our younger teachers, you know, are versus 25, 30 years ago, don't have that spouse that may have that high income job at West Star or Goodyear. And many of our young teachers leave school today with quite a bit of student debt. And, you know, just making that apartment rent payment, a car payment, and that student debt payment, they plus we're taking out, you know, the automatic 6% for our capers, your tier 3 capers investment. It is a disincentive.
I have a question. Did we look at, you know, we're not the only school district in here. Did we look at what others are doing and see if we can get ideas from that might work for our staff?
Mr. Mankey, did you hear that question?
Yeah, I did. I think, Mr. Munoz, what you would see is, to a large degree, school districts follow the same multi-vendor plan. I know a school district here in Shawnee County is in a similar situation, because I met with a recent retiree of Topeka Public Schools, and her husband had just retired from a surrounding district here in Shawnee County. And they shared with me how frustrating it was for them to consolidate their school retirement savings. They had engaged a fee-for-service financial planner, and they were really shocked at what their 403B accounts were yielding in administrative and rollover fees, and particularly the gentleman from the other district. So I know most other school districts are going to have a really similar setup if they're offering a 403B plan. Now, I know Lawrence Public Schools, there may be some public schools that do some matching to employee accounts, in which we don't do at this current time. So I think there may be some differences there, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of, particularly in the K-12. I know there's been some of the larger districts I've heard in Kansas City that have went to a single provider model, and or, you know, we've got school districts in Missouri, some surrounding states, as Mr. Reardon's report showed, that participate in trusts.
I've got a couple of questions that I wrote down during the presentation, Gary. So it's my understanding that everybody that's in one of the existing 12 plans is going to be required to transition to either this plan or some other tax deferred option. Is that correct?
So converting the current accounts, these are individual accounts. What we can do, and this is really the communications piece and consultation piece, we're not going to force people to convert their current account with AIG or AXA. What we will do is, you know, whatever point we move or we're allowed to move, if we are allowed to move to a single vendor, we would stop contributions. If you want to retain your VALIC account or your AXA account, you could do that. We would stop contributions in that account, and we would aim them towards the Horace Mann mutual fund-based retirement savings account.
Okay. The second question is, I think we'll probably get directed to somebody at Horace Mann, but because you focus on the K through 12 market, you know, 24% seems like a low participation rate to me. What school districts that already have established what we're proposing or hearing about, what is a normal participation rate? What's the goal for participation?
Gary, I can take that. This is Raphael, and then Peter can certainly, if he'd like to chime in. Peter Moore's our VP. He's a wealth of knowledge. But there are studies out there, typically multi-vendor, which is 99% of the school districts out there. There are a few that have gone single vendor, and I'll get to them in a minute. It's around 25 to 26% in the multi-vendor model, and it's because the lady so eloquently put it. It's deer in the headlights. It's analysis paralysis. I've got all these roads to choose from. I don't know who to talk to. I'm just going to stay away. When you have a single vendor model, it just makes it so much easier, clearer. The communication is coming from, and I don't want to say the school. It's not coming from Topeka, but it's with the backing, and it's just a clearer message. And I've done enrollment events where we are the main vendor, and I can tell you when it's a clear message, it's just a breath of fresh air. People come in, they're relaxed. They don't feel like they're on guard because they know that their employer looked out for them, right? We got a great plan, low price, and we're going to help you save for retirement. So 24% is in that average area for a multi-vendor plan. My goal is that I'd like to see, I'm going to put my foot in my mouth, and I hope I don't, but without COVID around, 50%, 60% would be great. That's a really nice for a voluntary plan where there is no matching funds from an employer. 50 to 60% is a home run, and that's where we'd like to be. Within a certain period of time, we'd love to see that and really help employees just have a secure retirement. And for an individual there who was asking, I think it was Rich. I came from TIAC-CREF, and I've always worked in the education market. I firmly believe that helping them save for retirement, the communication process, one of the things we do is we help counsel on student loans, help them out to understand how to either relieve that debt, also how to remove that debt if they qualify for those programs. So there's, Hillary's going to do an outstanding job along with some of her folks.
I have a question.
So just to follow up on that before you ask your question, Mrs. Bully. So you've done this before, I assume, and what percentage of participation do you get in those transitions from a multi-vendor to a single vendor?
Generally, and it's all over the board. It really is. It's going to focus. I don't want to say everybody's different, but as Gary mentioned before, you're going to have the individuals who are currently contributing. We'd love to have them continue to contribute. Then that's usually what we have. Usually within the first few weeks, you're going to see the greatest excitement, the transition meetings, getting everybody there, encouraging them to enroll, explaining the benefit. And you'd love to see an additional 15, 20% within just that first couple of weeks. I say with everything, it's that first initial excitement and how well it is planned. Unfortunately, we're in a period where that face-to-face could be limited. And that's, with COVID, that's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but we'll work through that challenge. We'll come up with a lot of options to make sure employees have plenty of access to hear what we have to say. And when we can be on the ground, we will be there on the ground.
Mrs. Bully, you had a question.
So many times teachers don't stay in the same district that they start work in. So what happens to their investment when they leave? Is it just a required rollover?
So really, the nature of the plans, Ms. Bowie, if the employee is under 59 and a half, so there's age limits of what you could do with that money. You can't start taking distributions until, and Hillary, correct me if I'm wrong, but at 59 and a half, so you could choose to leave it with your former employer, or those could certainly be rolled to your, if you switch school districts and they have a tax saving annuity program, they could certainly be rolled into their program. And we, today I sign off on rollout distributions, weekly.
So they could keep it in 501 even though they don't work in Topeka Public Schools.
Yeah, we wouldn't require them to roll. That's, again, the contract's owned by the individual. So you get, yeah, they could leave it there.
Well, I just appreciate the work you've done in this because I was one of those teachers trying to invest in the multiple providers that 501 okayed to invest with. And when I did retire and roll my money out of there, it was amazing the amount of fees that had been removed and were removed during the rollout. And it was shocking. And to get that information from them was almost impossible until it actually ended the contract and you could see what had occurred. So for you guys to take this step, I think it's so important for our educators and our paras are involved in this as well.
If you're a full-time,
custodians.
yeah, if you're a full-time, if you're a full-time employee, you're benefit eligible.
I just think this is a great idea because believe me, retirement isn't very easy. And I do have a nice papers, but our younger employees are not going to have this same cushion. And so I applaud our district for looking into something like this. I think it's so important.
Gary, I do have a question. What is the timeline that you envision for this? I mean, one of my worries as a parent is I know the work that we do with my kids and everything that we're sending to our teachers and what they have on their plate. And what do you see in terms of, is there some pressure that we need to make a decision anytime soon, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a drop dead. I can tell you that our preference just to get the program kicked off the ground and kind of circling back, answering your questions with Dr. Mickelson. And I think a little bit of our and Raphael's hesitation to offer up really what percentage of folks we could get, what can we get our participation up to, and I do think, because we've talked about that, 50 to 60% participation is achievable, which would more than double where we're at. But during a pandemic and during Zoom sessions, this is not something, right, that Hillary could easily do over a Zoom session. We need to get her in front of our employees. First of all, I would say that, and my goal here this evening is simply getting your buy-in, the board's buy-in, because certainly this is your decision, and ultimately the board has the fiduciary responsibility. Personally, if you and your fellow board members feel this is a positive step, I would suggest that we shoot for a July 1 conversion. We'll start in a new fiscal year. And I agree, throwing more things at employees is probably not the best thing to do. But at the same time, not doing anything and leaving the program in the state that it's in, it may be even a more of a disservice. So I would like to see us, if a single vendor platform is something we all think is a good idea, that we would look at converting our program over the next 6 months to where we'd have a go live around July. But
so with that thought, thank you so much, Mr. Minke. If that is pleasing to the board, that July 1 conversion date, we do have 2 staff development days that we will be bringing back to the board, and then we'll work with Mr. Minke on what those days are, because that's time for teachers to receive information, to get involved. And then we'd love to leave it to the finance committee to work with Mr. Minke on what that timeline looks like. So our goal tonight is to see, do we have your full support or consensus of support? Then Mr. Minke can start with those next steps, knowing that July 1st is the hope, but then we would build in time for teachers to have that. The other item is we'll create a webinar of information that you heard tonight. And then they're hearing a little bit much shorter kind of time frame in some chunks so that teachers can also explore information and have opportunity for that. It's great because it's before spring break, so it just gives people a little bit more time than what they normally would have during the normal school day. Dr. Mickelson, I'll turn it over to you, see if we have support from the board for Mr. Minke and team to move forward.
So this is a discussion item tonight. It's not an action item, so we will vote on it in 2 weeks, but this will give a good introduction to the board to know what is proposed. And in the next 2 weeks, if you have questions, I'm sure Mr. Minke will be willing to field those calls and answer them. So, okay, just one final thing. I'd just like to thank Mr. Newkirk and Mr. Reardon. They serve on the Topeka Public Schools Foundation Investment Committee. They volunteer their time, or Mr. Reardon previously volunteered his time, and he served as the chairman of the Foundation Investment Committee, and I think he did that for several years, and he roped his colleague into taking over his role. So Mr. Newkirk is chairing that committee as well. So thank you for your volunteer service on that committee. Next on the agenda is board member comments. So we'll start with Dr. Bonebreak at the end of the table.
Yes. Okay, I'm at the end of the table. Well, first of all, anybody that uses the word paradigm after word plan, I have to be very suspicious about what the hell they're saying. Now, I don't see why we wouldn't go with the Capers 457 plan. When we go with one of these other private vendors, we still have to maintain our degree of governance of their 2 plans. We have to monitor the service of their providers and make timely decisions related thereto. They have a higher fee, 0.34% compared to Capers at 0.22. Capers has all sorts of mutual funds, which in the last 10 years have averaged almost 10% growth. Capers will present, and not in the typical, I'm sure we've all sat through condominium vacation sales pitches, and I'm afraid that's that article they referred to, think your retirement plan is bad, talk to a teacher. Well, if you read that article, that's basically what was happening. I'm just frustrated with this, and I think, and they didn't even really consider the TIA, which my father recently passed, and that's what he had, and it was a magnificent program, and it's for most of the state employees. I cannot vote for the single provider unless we probably go with Capers, but we will discuss this in the future. That's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, Dr. Bonebreak. Dr. Morrison.
I really want to thank Gary and Shawnette for serving on that committee. And they really have done due diligence. And I might disagree with Dr. Bonebreak on that. But thank you guys a whole lot. Number one, and I just want to give positive reinforcement to Dr. Anderson, thanking her for wanting to stay with 501 for another year, hopefully many, many years. You've done I've been on the board long enough to have seen times when things weren't quite as easy. When I was president, and the president before me talked about times that weren't easy. And so you made my presidency very easy, and Dr. Mickelson probably can say the same. So thank you very much for that. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Munoz.
I don't believe Ms. Miller is on. I just wanted to say that we hear her frustrations, and as a parent, it's also been very tough to have to be with our kids and try and help them learn in ways that us as parents just don't understand fully. And that is to know that for all parents, and to know that we're working hard to try and get our kids back in as soon as we can. And I look at our county health scorecard every Thursday when it comes out, and so it went down to 19, and so it's going in a great direction. Hopefully it continues, though we know you can't know for sure. So just know that we heard her loud and clear, and we know that she's not alone. There are others as well. Other than that, I want to thank Gary and the others for the work on this this investment. I think it's really important for our employees to make sure that we are offering the best product possible, and I think it's very clear that what we have right now can be better, and so we definitely need to make a change there. And congratulations to Dr. Anderson on her award recently. I caught part of her speech that she was given at a local university, and given everything that's going on recently, as well as Martin Luther King Day recently, I think it was a great message. So thank you, everybody, all of the principals. I read those messages that you sent to us as board, and we really do appreciate it. It really is our pleasure to do what we can on our part to for the kids and for teachers and for Topeka. So thank you, everybody.
Mrs. Boley. You're on mute, Mrs. Boley.
I don't have chat on my screen tonight. For some reason, I don't have that selection, so I missed those comments. I hope I am able to read them sometime. I wanted to mention that Mrs. Leahy, who donated the $1,000 to McEachran, used to teach at McEachran. And so she is a former teacher. So that is says a lot for Mr. Williams and his building, that somebody would donate money like that. So we really thank her for that. I really love it when students come and tell us other students' voices. I don't think I would have voted for spectators except for the impassioned request of the students asking that parents are able to see their students play. And so I really love hearing their point of view. So I want to thank them for coming and speaking with us. As a former teacher, I am so thankful our district is looking at something like this. I can tell you what it was like to pick out, an investment. They were at our benefit fair, and whoever had the best pin and a sucker that draws you to their table and to give you their spiel was about how you got to select if you wanted to give them money or not to invest. So to have just a direction, some understanding, and then to have education on top, I think is extremely powerful to help our teachers prepare for their retirement, particularly since Capers has changed their model. I think it's very important. I hope the spectators enjoy watching their seniors play, their students play. Hopefully we'll be past this pandemic soon with the vaccinations coming out. Please continue to wear your face masks. Our numbers are going down, and that is really helpful. And I want to, commend our school district for food banks. I work with harvesters often, and the number of cars and families walking up to get food right now is impressive and incredible in our city. So that we're going to be a location where people can come and help feed their families. I am so behind that, and I so appreciate our district being willing to do that. Mr. Hare and his school and Capital City, spending so much time doing this in the past and now adding another one is just remarkable. Thank you all for putting in that time and volunteering. And if you need a volunteer, let me know. I'll come. Thanks everybody for supporting us, and we appreciate the support from our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Boley. Mrs. Stewart Campbell.
Thank you. Yeah, first I'd like to say thank you to everybody for school board recognition. And it really is an honor and a privilege. And yeah, it's been a hard year for everybody, but it's an honor, and I'm really grateful to serve on this board. And I want to thank my fellow board members, all of you, how much I respect you. And we may not always agree on everything, but how I genuinely respect your opinions and how we interact with each other. I had the treat last week of going in person to Highland Park Central and reading a book to a group of first graders, and they were adorable, and I really enjoyed that. And I would also like to congratulate Dr. Anderson for her receiving the MLK Living the Legacy, I think it's called, Living the Legacy Award from Mid-America Nazarene University, and also her selection in speaking nationally with the NEA, the national NEA president, about equity issues with broadband. So that's another honor. You bring a lot of honor to our district and expertise. And I want to acknowledge our drum. That video they made was so awesome. Their send off for our return to remote, because it's sad. Nobody wants to go back to remote, but we needed to considering the state of the pandemic. But everybody prefers in person. And so that drumline, that video was so inspiring during these hard times. And I just really want to acknowledge our wonderful drumline and that video going out. And I can never thank our educators and our parents enough with their understanding and their flexibility during as we had to move back to remote. And I know it's really hard. And I want to say that I understand it from all angles. I have children in the district. I'm married to a TPS teacher, and I myself am a teacher. So I really understand how difficult it is from all angles. And I see how hard my children's teachers are working. And unfortunately, my children, I know they are learning a lot from their Landon teachers, and I'm just grateful. And that's all I have to say. You're
Thank
next,
you, Mrs.
Reverend Williams.
Thanks, Mrs. Stewart Campbell. Reverend John.
Unmute myself. Well, being next to last, everybody else says a lot of what you wanted to say. But I do want to also echo Mr. Munoz's comment regarding the parent that spoke earlier. These are challenging times, and we've got difficult decisions to make, but it's all in the best interest of the health and safety of our kids, as well as our patrons and our staff. Also wanted to acknowledge and appreciation for our law enforcement personnel. They have a thankless job at times, but influential at the same time. And also Dr. Anderson's recognition earlier this week, MLK Living Legacy Award, and also the board recognition. I appreciate that. This is my last year of my current term. Our terms end a year from the, I think, yeah, a year from 2 weeks ago. So, but it is a labor of love, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve our district. That's it.
Thank you, Reverend Williams. For the first 6 years where Reverend Williams and I sat on in the board meeting room, he was on the end and I was next. And so we always had the opportunity to kind of share what we wanted to share first. And he and I are learning the other end of the order. And I'm always impressed by the comments that are shared by you and want to echo them tonight. Specifically, the food pantry. I'm committed to volunteering now after hearing the great lengths that people go to just be able to gather some food to feed their families. I think I'm going to put on the calendar and call some principals, see if I can volunteer and help. But I'm especially appreciative that we think of it and that our patrons and community are able to participate in that. So it's so important. With that, I'll conclude my comments and adjourn the meeting. Thank you for your participation tonight.
Maybe we live in interesting times.